Festival 2018. Lembrando que esta sala possui saídas de emergência devidamente localizadas, qualquer coisa é só seguir para uma delas. O Wi-Fi é gratuito, então você pode usar o seu celular, mas use em modo silencioso. Filme, fotografe e poste bastante usando a hashtag BigFestival2018. E lembrando que quem quiser, à esquerda do palco tem fones de tradução simultânea para você poder acompanhar a palestra.
Acelerar mudanças, mixar linguagens, deletar fronteiras, transformar realidades. Porque o futuro é hoje. É arte, ciência e tecnologia abrindo multipossibilidades. Oi Futuro, em todas as regiões do país, apoiando projetos que encontram você e milhões de brasileiros. A gente conecta, transforma e transcende. Oi, junto é bem melhor.
Boa noite, pessoal. Vamos agora para o último painel desta quarta-feira, que o tema vai ser Big LATAM, nova safra de jogos multiplayer online desenvolvidos na América Latina. Lembrando que você pode mandar sua pergunta para os palestrantes por meio do aplicativo do Big Festival 2018, só baixar, entra na palestra e manda para cá. Vou chamar eles então ao palco. Jesus Fabre, Carlos Martim, Juan de Arraza, Andrés Cartim, Camila Stoffelt e Eivar Rojas. Palmas para eles, gente. Tá faltando uma cadeira, gente. Vou pedir que a produção coloque aqui, então. Já foi lá pegar. Estão trazendo. Não, temos aqui, ó. Temos aqui, ó. Bota aqui ao ladinho, então, para Jesus sentar. Peço desculpas aí que faltou uma cadeira. Boa palestra para vocês.
Obrigado. Okay, so thank you for coming. This panel is very interesting, I think, because we have different type of multiplayer developers, game developers, and each one of them has a different business model, a different platform, a different country, and they are in different stages of their own project. So briefly, we are going to hear them explaining their projects, and we are going to see, we are going to watch some of their trailers, and afterwards we are going to dive into their games. First, we have Tree Interactive from Costa Rica. Please, can you put their game Hookbots?
Hey, that wasn't the trailer, but there was like a development video, but it's okay. You kind of get the picture. It's a multiplayer game, very similar to Towerfall in a way, but you have grappling hooks. Now, in the latest trailer, you have a lot of crazy things happening. Hopefully, sometime we can share it soon. So.
Next, we have Juan de Urraza from Paraguay. His studio is Possibility Tech, and his game is Factions.
Thank you. Factions is a location-based game mixed with the MOBA genre. So you go to real places in the world and battle the owners of the place and try to conquer. And so you try to conquer your city and the whole world. That's the main idea of the game.
Next we have from Rio de Janeiro, Camila Slotfeld from Bitcake Studios. They are developers of Holodrive.
So Holodrive is a multiplayer online 2D shooter. So it's free to play on Steam now, and it's not so new. It's been out for a while and available to play since 2013. Actually, it began with another name called Project Tilt, and now it's free to play on Steam, and we have a publisher, Versus Evil, helping us with marketing.
And next we have Eva Rojas from Colombia, from Efecto Studios. They have a game called Decoherence.
Hello, everyone. This is Decoherence. Decoherence is still in development phase. We are in alpha. The game is not released. We don't have much more public information about the game. It's a 1 versus 1 multiplayer. It's an action strategy. You build your team and do the strategy previous the battle, and during the battle, you control one character, and all the units will behave as you told them to do. So this is Decoherence.
And the last guest is not a developer, is Carlos Martin from the US. He works as an independent agent for companies, indie game companies, or independent companies from all over the world in the fields of business and management. If you want to.
Hi, my name is Carlos Martin. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I started a management company about 2 years ago where I help independent developers and other game companies find publishing, distribution, and financing for their games. Yeah, some of the games are multiplayer.
First question, I'm going to break this. I don't want to talk to you, anyone, yet, because I want to put a little bit of attention to Carlos. Carlos, from the trailers you watch right now, which game do you think is more viable from the publishing perspective?
So I think one of the things that I believe publishers look at when they want to, when they're thinking about multiplayer is, the purpose of multiplayer. So the obvious purpose is we want the game to be fun, and we think multiplayer is more fun or differently fun than something else. But one of the value that multiplayer brings to a project is, among other things, is retention. The idea is that if you build a game and you have a multiplayer component to it, you're going to get people continue playing that game, right? And if you continue playing that game, the benefits of that include several things. Number one, you're going to get more press, right? You probably heard that, oftentimes when you release a game, the launch period is kind of the press period, and then after that, it can be tough to maintain momentum or kind of spike up momentum if you're not getting it. So when you have a community around a game, it helps you get some sort of coverage, some sort of press, because people have a reason to talk about your game. So that's a big value. And the other thing is having monetization moments, because you can provide more content to your audience, whether that be custom features, custom content, whatsoever. So I think some of the things that people look at when they're looking at potential multiplayer games is this going to help create an interested and compelling audience? Is it going to create an opportunity to generate increasing revenues, both to help profitability, but also to reinvest in the product and support the audience even further? Obviously, the risk to all this is you need to have a sizable, or at least more sizable audience sometimes with multiplayer games, because if you don't have people to play with, you're going to have a harder time developing. So there's a benefit to the strategy, but there's a risk that they have to account for. And so I think those are the factors that you'd want to take into account when looking at any games, including the ones here. You like the dodge there and how I dodged the question?
Yeah, that's good. Give it to him. Thank you. Next one is, we have one developer here with a publisher. So from the rest of us, of you, you have lived a lot of more stages into the life of a multiplayer game, more than the rest, I think. I think the next in the queue would be you, Juan, because you are now on alpha or beta. You are launched?
Yeah, we're launched.
But worldwide?
Worldwide.
Okay, but recently?
Recently.
And they released like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago. So I want to know first Camila's opinion about how it is to release a game, their game without the publisher, because I remember Project Tilt hadn't a publisher, and how was it when you got the publisher?
The difference?
I want to see the differences.
So for us, I think being a Brazilian developer, it was very hard to reach people outside of Brazil and Latin America. So having a publisher really helped make partnerships and reach streamers, YouTubers outside of our country, in the US or Europe. So that's one thing. It really helped. And also going to trade shows. So we had an amazing opportunity to go to PAX East and have a booth there with 16 computers in LAN, and people playing all the time for 4 days. And I was there in Boston. Was an amazing experience, and that was only possible because of the publisher. So I think for us it was like a very good experience, and that gave a lot to our studio, Yeah, so that's the main difference, a lot more reach,
So basically you got the publisher's marketing team and also advice. Did it help you on the business side? Did it help you on the planning? Like how to, because a multiplayer game is something that is very alive. So I suppose they helped you with how to keep the people engaged, like retention, like what Carlos said.
Yes, so they helped us with some monetization kind of like advice. They had one specialist in their team that like looked at what we were doing. They also helped us plan content ahead. So like we would have a few updates lined up, and they would help us market them. They would help us think about how to name the update and how. So we found out that it was better to create bigger updates with some branding behind them instead of like every week updating with a very little thing. So we were trying different things. So they helped us do that. Create bigger packages of content to get people more interested to start playing again if they had stopped or something like that. And yeah, I think that's it. I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Yeah.
Juan?
Well, we don't have a publisher, and we looked a lot for it on the past year, and was very difficult for us. We are a small studio from a very far corner of the world. Nobody knows our country. So it was difficult, and most of the mobile publishers look on KPIs, and our kind of game, it was very unique. It's location-based with multiplayer PvP, so there were no examples out there to compare. And we had a beta for 6 months, and the numbers were so-so, just in Paraguay, and we had like 3,000 users, and we didn't have any kind of experience on user acquisition or monetization, and we learned from scratch. And this was also our first game, so it was kind of suicide. But somehow it worked. But we find hard the publishers to get interested in this kind specific of games without KPIs. So we went on our own, and we've been in beta like 6 months, and then we been finalist on the Google Indie Play contest that was held here in Sao Paulo in February, and we were one of the winners. And that changed a lot for us because we got a lot of exposure, and we got featured. We got like 120,000 installs in Malaysia, Indonesia, and faraway countries. And well, it's difficult for an indie studio to do the user acquisition, marketing, and learn how to monetize. It's really tough. And we are still learning. We hope that the next iteration of the game in 2 months will be better than this one. And from there, we'll see what happens. But as our game is already released worldwide, we think it's difficult now to start working with a publisher at this stage.
Juan's game is a free-to-play game, and this is something good, and it could be something bad too, right? In opposite, Avar's game is a premium game, like Andres' game. I want to know, Andres, you still haven't started to do play tests like in events or anything, right?
No, yes.
Good. How far are you in this?
So we've been doing tests since like last year at these local events, always in Costa Rica. Kids always asking when the game's out, and we obviously always disappoint them when it's ready. We take the Blizzard approach. And we went to the GDC this year, and we presented the game there. That was the first international debut, so to speak, and it went very well, I think. In terms of play mechanics, we got very interesting feedback from potential publishers of the game. And that really helped us a lot in terms of knowing how we should really focus our efforts and give visibility to some things that may not have been visible to them, as well as giving the player more verbs, so to speak, so the game is more competitive. So not just the hook, but other different mechanics and emergent mechanics that arise from multiplayer games that make them seem very different one from another, as well as just the general progression So yeah, in terms of playtesting, I think we're just getting there. We're finishing up a couple of game modes, and we think we have really solid, like around 3 game modes, but we want them to be around 8. And 2 of them we're still working, and then the other ones are just in planning phase. So yeah, we're still some ways to go, but.
Ivar, I know you have been going through different stages too, and I'm curious about what have been your lessons learned.
Well, it's been a really long journey. We started almost 3 years ago, the first raw prototype, and building a multiplayer competitive strategy game. It's been really challenging for us because all the validation process of the being from the prototype to the vertical slice took us about 2 years just to understand where was the perfect spot for the project. And after that, doing all the validation in international events with publishers, we started doing a public testing in events like PAX or GDC Play, just making sure if our theory about the mechanics were true, because you can think that everything that you describe in the game design document is what the player will understand, but that is 50-50 true, because at the end, the interaction with the players change really fast, and they get a different perception for what they are seeing. So our next step is going to, we hope to participate at PAX this year on September, PAX West, in order to validate the last part of the game, that is the single player mode that complements the multiplayer. So we need to make sure to bring a good experience in the single player side in order to have enough players playing the multiplayer. If we don't have a big pool of players, as Carlos said, we will be like screwed. So it's been interesting journey, just understanding how to pivot the idea, making sure we are moving in the right direction.
Well, there is any multiplayer game developer here? Somebody here is doing a multiplayer game? 1, okay. 2, is the same game, but online multiplayer. Online? Good. Okay. I personally think it's very, very difficult to develop these type of games.
Don't do it.
You need a lot of qualities and a lot of disciplines covered in your team. We are talking about game design, of course, always. We are talking about user acquisition, retention. We are talking about community. We are talking about, there is something I'm missing aside of coding.
The lag, latency.
Yeah.
That is the big issue in multiplayer games.
So this is the worst enemy. So you said the lag. Go forward and say how we can beat it.
Well, we try to beat them implementing a deterministic engine, but basically the game is a simulation in the local machine, so the game is not running through a server in order to avoid the issue with the lag, but it still is an issue because we need to interact with one of the characters in the game. So we need to find several ways to avoid the issue, to try to minimize the amount of information transmitted between players and trying to avoid the server. So it's really challenging because at the end, because the digital market lets every player in every spot of the world wanted to play this game. So you need to be very smart how to localize those players and trying to find enough matches that they don't need to go out of the country and trying to find other players. So it's really challenging.
Anything else from your experience? Is there any kind of evil thing in the development, like a big obstacle you've been facing?
Yes.
Confess.
So yeah, well, our game started as just a local multiplayer game, and then just moving to making it online isn't as easy as just, hey, let's hook an online component, that's it. It really changes the architecture as to who makes what decisions, and you really have to start coding, separating the logistics of a lot of things. I actually made some slides because I didn't know the format, and in the slides I used like 5 slides to represent the thought process that I went through for just translating the jump procedure that would basically make a GFX and a sound effect and a movement, and how it would translate to some of the code being run on the server. Then you notice that it lags on the player that's actually using it, so you gotta simulate it on the player that actually sent the input and do it immediately while you send it to the server, and so the other guys get it. And I mean, it's just it's been kind of nightmarish actually, but yeah, I mean it's coming along, but it's a road.
We have, sorry, please. We have 2 main problems. One is that our game, we needed a client-server kind of game. It's not point-to-point because cheaters are everywhere, and we needed to control everything to avoid cheating, and cheating the GPS and a lot of cheating. But that was very difficult for us, and the other problem related was that our game is to play in the street. So you need to have a 3G connection and be able to play. And some people say that that was impossible. But we started with UDP and it didn't work. And we have a tweaked TCP strange monster that works. And you can play on 3G in this client-server configuration, and you can play battles up 5 versus 5 people, and it works. But it was a tough challenge.
In our case, I think with HoloDrive we took a different path. So we launched the game as soon as possible in a very early stage. So our biggest challenge was always like how to get more players all the time, how to keep the rooms full, which I think this is the biggest problem with multiplayer games. You never know, like, people are not playing because they don't find a room, and they're not finding a room because there is no one playing at the time. So if you don't have players all the time trying to log in, then you don't have rooms. So it's very hard to reach critical mass, and there's a lot of different ways to solve the problem. For example, the usual solutions are bots versus having more people. So you either invest your time making bots, or you invest in having more players, you know? And both of them are very hard. So what we did once when we were still on the web, when Unity web player was a thing a few years ago, we just launched the game on every web portal we could. We just like put it out there, and we got thousands of players. It really worked. It didn't last forever, but that really fixed the problem, and it was very good to see that with that we could see, okay, now we have players, now we can really see what problems are the game's problems actually, what we're doing that is wrong, that is not driving our retention up, and what is the problem because, you know, because they didn't find anyone play. Because you don't know if your retention is low, you're not sure if people are not liking the game or they are just not finding anyone to play with. So you can't really answer the questions, you know. So that's how we had to deal with it, and I think that's the biggest challenge.
We had the same problem, bots or not bots, and we tried to avoid bots for like 8 months, and in the end we have bots because we have different time zones and people from different countries wanting to play, and they get bored if they have to wait more than a minute to get a match. So we have bots, but if we can, we try to have complete matches. But if it's not possible, there's not a lot of people playing, we just give the bots and they can still play.
So we are in that dilemma right now, and actually our conclusion about bots is that you have to script the bots. So it's really boring playing against a bot because of that. So we started like 3 months ago a different approach to that, and it's using machine learning. So the game capture all the matches we have running in the last 2 years, and we are integrating a platform to get all that information and start like digging into the profiles of the matches and trying, because I'm not sure if we can make it, trying to do a prototypes of players' profiles in order to find the best approach to play against with. So, but still is in process. So.
But that's amazing. Our problem was that bots are too good, and they beat everyone because they play in teams, and people tend not to play in teams. So you have 5 versus 5, and the bots go together and kill the same guy, but the others are just running around and getting killed. So it's really difficult.
And the issue is you can go like just to make the harder bot. That's the issue for using bots. But when you have this behavior, how evolves match after match, the human feels that it's a challenge there. So that's why we're trying to find ways to communicate that to the player.
Anything to add, Andres? No? Okay. I have something to add. That was very interesting. For me, it was super easy. Like, you do the whole moderation. So now I have Carlos here. And I'm sure he has some stories or some anecdotes about multiplayer games he's been working with in the past. I'm curious about how you've been working with those developers, the role you've been playing in the past in those projects, some lessons learned, some advice that you can give them.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked from the publishing side on multiplayer games, and they're all different. So some multiplayer games are more traditional, let's say a console game with co-op or some sort of playing unified or competitive. I think some of the most interesting multiplayer stuff is in the free-to-play space, only because I think it's a little bit more it's a little bit less common for a lot of people. What I think is really interesting about multiplayer is that, thinking again about this concept of retention, as you hang on to players and players continue to engage in your game, it does bring into play more of these, like monetization opportunities. And so, when you have a premium game, for example, standard premium game, let's say it's a $60 game. And if you were to think about economic theory, for example, you have a $60 game, but you have something they call a demand curve. So there might be somebody who's willing to pay, let's say we have the new Call of Duty, right? And it's sold for $60. There might be somebody that's willing to pay $80 for that game. So when they pay $60 for that game, they're getting a $20 value because it's actually worth more to them than what they're actually paying. But if there's somebody who wants to pay $40 for that game, they're not gonna play. You've lost a consumer and you've lost that monetization opportunity. And so, as generally speaking, the demand curve looks such as the higher the price of the product, the less people you're going to get as it goes down. So oftentimes you have this free-to-play concept where the idea is you're going to bring a lot of people into the game. But I think sometimes it's a little bit of a misnomer, because I think that you could also think about free-to-play as kind of pay as you like, right? So it may be free to get into, but if you build your game so that there's monetization opportunities for people to engage in the content in a relevant way, the value of those customers is going to change pretty significantly. I mean, we saw in PC games that some of these consumers were paying, $10,000 per consumer, right? It's rare, there's not a lot of them, but you add up a few of those guys, and suddenly it's an interesting model. A lot of that is driven by multiplayer game mechanics, specifically because it gives people a reason to come back to the game. You've got a community that you're building. You've got strategy. You've got a skill set that you're developing. The esports sort of development over the last few years is very real. People are really developing a very clear, skill set for these games, and there could be opportunities where, if you're creative about what you're doing, you're going to create monetization opportunities. That's going to be interesting not only for you as a developer, but for publishers. So. I thought that was an interesting point. I mean, we saw some PC games where we did see some really good monetization, driven largely at the foundation by strong multiplayer mechanics, but that subtle additional layer, which is the monetization aspect of it, right?
There is something that we've been touching the topic, but we haven't dived into it. Camila mentioned it, that it's very important to get players and keep them. So I believe every one of you, 4 developers, have already a community. You built some sort of group of players that keep engaging with your game regularly. I want you to ask every one of you, first, how did you find the community, like make it grow? What were the first good practices you learned? And now, because you're in particular, now 2 years afterwards, what of those good practices are still valid or better? What you learn in terms of good practices when it's time to build and keep a community for your game?
In terms of community management?
In terms of how you talk to them, what you do with them, and what you do with them regarding the progress of your game and the state of your game. Because I'm sure you had troubles with the game, I'm sure you had delays, you said something that couldn't make it like real on time, and also you had to get new players and sell the game somehow. Not aside of the help of the publisher as a developer. So I'm talking about acquiring new players physically on digital media, or social media, on the internet, and also by yourself and with the publisher.
So we tried to build a community from the start, and we started on Facebook. And then we went to, now we have a Discord channel. That's where we put our community, in the Discord channel. And we always had like ways inside the game to make people want to interact with the community. So we had like links to our Facebook forum. We had a send a feedback button since the beginning. And with this button, they could talk to the team. And we had a policy in our team that we would always reply to players. And sometimes they sent like crazy stuff, like they just want to talk to someone. It's, but we always replied to them. And I think that's like, we always try to be close to the players, and that really helps the community. Now they also do translation for us. Sometimes they suggest content for customizations. So we try to keep like a close relationship. And we try to integrate with tools, like for example, we have Discord API. So you can join a game straight from a button in Discord. You can click that and then it opens HoloDrive and you join someone else's game in their party,
One little question. As we said before, retention, numbers are very important. But sometimes you have players that are more than a number, and they are very, very much an expert in your game and see things that you don't see. And those players, they can predict or they can tell you what because they've been playing multiplayer games a lot and for a long time. And it is kind of contradictory. You think, should I hear them and make changes and believe them, or should I go through the numbers, through the retention, through the clicks and the statistics, the analytics? I'm wondering if you in particular, because I think your game is the one that the people have been playing for a longer time, and you've been transforming the game a lot. I'm curious about it.
That's something that we always have to be careful, because it's easy to just like read a comment from a player and want to make a change, but we always discuss that as a team and try to see what's good for the product. So we never like just take a player's opinion and go with it. That's not what we want. We have some players like, I don't know, they were Quake pros. Our game is a bit like Quake, but in 2D, so ex-Quake pros really like it, but I don't know, they think it's not some way that it should be because Quake was like that, you know? So we cannot, I mean, they really like the game, but we can't just do what they want. So yeah, that's a real issue. They are very opinionated, you know, so we always have to balance things out.
So I want to give my opinion of my very, very small niche, which is basically, we found like on the Costa Rican events that we did, we started finding a lot of the same kids and people attending the same game and wanting to try out the new stuff. So we started creating these questionnaires to the people, or to the kids, and see what they were feeling and what they would change and stuff at first. And when we received feedback, like what you said, we really tried to actually see what they meant with it, because they don't always know what the solution is, even if they propose one. But what they are trying to phrase is what they are feeling. So at times they felt like some robot was very powerful, when in fact, when we looked at the statistics, the analytics of what robot was winning more, it didn't show that, but it was more of the feel of the robot itself, or the velocity maybe, or the dodging didn't really work as well, so it felt very vulnerable. So it was more of representing what they wanted to say and trying to fix that. So we did that, and it's very interesting to me to see it. Obviously, you have a much bigger scale and more dynamic, but for us it was just events. But we would totally see the change in reaction and how they felt about the new changes and what they meant, and they were like, "Hey, you implemented this, you fixed this. This is so cool." And it's amazing to engage with the community in that way.
You know, our game is very different from anything, so we needed to test a lot of the core loop mechanics that were very difficult to test, because we test the battle we did kind of, I don't know, some meetings, invited people, focus groups, that kind of things, and they filled some forms and tell us what they feel on the battle. But the battle is just one small part of the game. And there were no solution for people trying to get outside, conquer places. If there are a lot of people outside or a few people outside, what will happen? So in the end, we decided to go for an open beta in our country and see what happened. And we knew that some of the mechanics might not work, but players are the best ones to discover that. And we did a lot of mistakes. And at times, we have a lot of memes. The people go into our office with torches like the Simpsons and try to burn everything to the ground. But we knew that some mechanics needed to change. And our mistake was that we just changed the mechanics, get a new version of the game, release it, and people hate it, and they started to hate everything. So we learned in the hard way how to work with our players, and we have like Facebook groups, we have a WhatsApp group, because we speak with all the faction leaders, because there are several factions, they can create their own faction, and we speak on WhatsApp, and we tell them, we will launch a new version of the game with this, please test it. Because our QA department is just one person and do database management and a lot of other things. So we know that there might be some crashes out there, but just test it and tell us. And they keep telling us, this worked good, this not. And other thing that was a good idea, but come later in the game, that's that we added a chat inside the game, because people fight each other outside in the world, but they don't know who is who. So now they can kill each other and then know, hey, I hate you, but I want you in my faction. So, and we have some hardcore players that when they see someone new hanging around for a while, more than, 5 days, they start to speaking to them, inviting to their factions. So the players are our recruitment group and our beta testers, and they help a lot. And that worked very well, but that's because our game is very unique and they don't have another similar game to play. Maybe if there were, 10 games like ours, they would just hate us and go somewhere else. But they keep playing.
Well, we have a different approach, thanks to Jesus, because last year we did this announcement about the open alpha for the game, and suddenly in 3 hours we had 2,000 people filling the forms, and Jesus told me, take care with that. And I told him, you know what, nobody will talk about our game because we are not doing anything related with marketing. It was just one Facebook post. And 3 hours later, we have people from Turkish, Russia, China, and I started digging into the information, and we find out that there so many bots just trying to capture games, modifying the games and getting into the Chinese market. So I was so scary about that. And that moment I realized I needed to be careful with how to release the information, how to share the game, because it's our baby. So I don't want my baby in China with different name. So we started doing like a very specific focus group with people that we needed to validate the profile, if they play strategy games, trying to do like our job, just making sure we bring the right people. Right now, we are going to public events like PAX in order to meet the player and hear in the first person view the feedback, making sure that the player is taking enough time to play the game. And yeah, we're opening the door really slowly because we don't want to be like in a bad position in China or Russia.
But multiplayer games has a small advantage on that, is that in our game, the backend is really complex. So you can clone the front of the game, but you need, a lot of engineers working on the backend. So
Man,
it's
in
very
China,
difficult.
it's amazing how they take that.
But they have to do all your work again.
I know, but for me, it's like, I'm just afraid that I don't want to be like, even because I heard this story that they take the binary and publish. Even doesn't work. They just need to publish something in like the 1,000 stores in China. So it's just that. So I don't want to be in that position.
Let's open for the questions from the audience. Alguém quer fazer uma pergunta? Só levanta a mão que eu levo o microfone. Só falar ali, vamos lá. Vamos lá que a gente tem pouco tempo. Só fala teu nome e a pergunta.
Hi, my name is Paulo. I'm also doing a multiplayer game called Crystal League. It's available. It's on the booths out there. You guys can take a look. So my question is more like a technical question. Which tools you guys use for the online system? It's like Photon, Unet, or you guys do your own? Like, how do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, we're currently using Photon Unity Networking with us, and we're integrating some other stuff for the matchmaking.
We are using SmartFox server, which is great. It's free in the low tier, so you can develop all your game, launch it, and when you have a lot of concurrent users, you start paying. So for us, it was the only option at the time because Photon was not free at the time we started developing. And we wanted a client-server infrastructure, so we needed a server that do all the stuff. So that's why we select, and we work with Unity, and Unity integrates SmartFox server.
We use Photon 2, Photon Cloud, and it's been great for us actually all this time. And we are actually, right now we have a very good relationship with Exit Games, the company that makes Photon. They are actually our clients right now. We do work for them, so it's been very good.
Okay, our CTO got crazy, and we have a proprietary online system. It's madness, but it was the only way to, because the game works differently, because it's peer-to-peer, so we needed to rewrite all the code in the multiplayer side. So we use GameSparks just to do like the initial transaction and the final transaction, just making sure it's not cheating in one of the sites, but it's just like intermediary information.
As a friend told me, I will never develop a multiplayer game because in 200 years, if the internet is not like it is, nobody will be able to play it because you need the server code, you need a lot of the whole infrastructure. And if I do that, it will be peer-to-peer. So you're making a game that will last forever.
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah. So I think that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We tried to cover every aspect that we could think of. For everybody who wants to make a multiplayer game, to have an idea of how hard it is. I hope you got also the enthusiasm from them of how exciting it is to work with this technology, to work with the players, with the community, and I hope you liked it. Thank you very much.
Obrigado aos palestrantes, obrigado à presença do público. Por hoje é só, amanhã tem mais Big Festival. Uma boa noite para vocês, bom descanso.